Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the British Gene and Cell Therapy Patient and Public Engagement Series. I'm Nikapota, a board member of BSGCT, and I will be your host this evening. So we are delighted to have the wonderful Sharmila Nikapota for this evening. So thank you, Sharmila, for giving this talk for this series. So before I introduce the speaker, I'd like to let you guys know as audience, if you have any questions, please put them into the live chat. So Sharmila is the founder of Cure UB and Sohana's mother. She graduated from Cambridge University with a degree in veterinary medicine in 1994 and worked in general practice, gaining a certificate in veterinary radiology. She stopped work soon as Sohana was born. Optimism within the research community, coupled with chronic underfunding for EB medical research, led to the idea for dedicated research funding. She is the drive force behind the fund, planning events, thinking up of funding challenges, meeting researchers, and speaking at events such as today. With the growth of the fund, she plans to concentrate on maximizing research progress by building collaborations between researchers, other funding bodies, and relationship with biotech to realize the ultimate aim of the fund, which is to cure EB. She has 3 other daughters and a dog, and there's a quote from Sharmila: "Watching Sohana suffer the agonizing pain of EB every day is the best incentive to push forward research to find a treatment for all." And so today, Sharmila will be providing a talk on how to say and how to live with the challenges of living with EB. Over to you, Sharmila.
Great. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here talking to you all. But first, I'd like to say thanks to Christos and Raj from the British Society for Gene and Cell Therapy for inviting me to talk about EB, or epidermolysis bullosa. Now, I think many of your speakers are research scientists, but as Raj hinted, that wasn't me. In fact, I used to be doing more things like this. So yes, I qualified as a vet, but in 2002, our first child was born with recessive dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. And that led me on a path to founding QEB, a charity that's dedicated to researching treatments, and as our name suggests, a cure for epidermolysis bullosa. EB is a devastating genetic skin blistering condition, which we say is hard to say and hard to live with, best illustrated by my twins attempting to say it.
Dysropic epidermic bullosa.
But after this very, very light start, I need to get serious and show you how horrific EB is and why effective treatments and cures cannot come soon enough. So, sorry about that. So what is EB and how does it manifest? Epidermolysis bullosa is a genetic skin blistering condition that is caused by defects or absence of proteins that hold the skin together. There are thought to be about 500,000 people living with the condition worldwide, 5,000 in the UK, and across 4 main types. So that's EB simplex, junctional EB, dystrophic EB, and Kindler. And you can see the sort of layers, and I've got another slide here, which just shows you the skin layers and where the EB types come in. The level at which the defect occurs in part determines the severity of the condition, though the mutations and whether dominant or recessive plays a huge part in determining the impact of the patient. As a rule of thumb, the more superficial the protein defect or loss, the milder the condition, though there are fatal types of simplexes and mild forms of dystrophic EB. So just go on again. So in EB, skin is incredibly fragile, and children with the condition are often referred to as butterfly children. Their skin is said to be as fragile as a butterfly's wings. As the name suggests, all types of EB cause blistering of the skin with the absolute minimum of trauma or friction. This in turn can lead to skin loss if the blister roof is damaged, leaving raw and very painful wounds all over the body. If the protein defect is deep, as in dystrophic EB, scars and contractures form when the skin attempts to heal, leading to progressive disability. Hands and feet show mitten deformities and mobility becomes severely compromised. Or it can affect the airways, as in severe forms of junctional EB, leading to early death in infancy. Unfortunately, it is not just external skin that is affected. Internal skin and eye surfaces can be affected too. Blistering and wounds in the oral cavity and esophagus lead to difficulty eating, and strictures in the esophagus necessitate having esophageal dilatations with balloon catheters. And with the eye problems, you can get terrible scarring on the eyes and then blindnesses as well as a result. There is currently no effective treatment and no cure for EB. The daily management consists of an exhausting and painful routine of dressing changes and wound care. EB blisters are not self-limiting. They grow bigger if left, and eventually the skin roof will shear, leaving a raw wound underneath. So blisters that form need to be pricked with a needle. Dry skin needs to be clipped and moisturized, and children and adults with severe forms can spend 4 to 5 hours a day having dressing changes. The pain is extreme, and quite literally, it is torture, as this next video illustrates. If you are squeamish in any way, please do avoid this next 2 minutes, as some parts are quite graphic and distressing to watch.
There is a castle in a cloud. I sleep. Heavy floors for me to sleep. Not in my castle on a cloud. There is a room that's full of toys. There are 100 boys and girls. Nobody shouts or talks too loud. Not in my castle on a cloud. There is a lady all in white, holds me and sings a lullaby. She's nice to see and she's soft to touch. She says, Cosette, I love you very much. I know a place where no one's lost. I know a place where no one cries. Crying at all is not allowed. Not in my castle. No.
Sorry. So what sort of research needs to be done to tackle the condition? There are so many different areas that need to be tackled. On the seemingly lowest level, there's a need for symptomatic relief. Many forms of EB are intensely itchy and they carry a kind of malignant itch. I've heard one adult describe it as having a million ants under your skin, which you cannot get rid of. And antihistamines and things like that have very little effect. So having something to help in this area would be hugely beneficial. It would also be wonderful to have more in the arsenal against pain. And of course, even creams that promote wound healing would be great. Effective symptomatic relief would bring with it a quality of life change, but we are also looking for therapies that would in some way tackle the genetic defects, albeit locally, to make meaningful quality of life change. Examples for this would be gene-corrected skin grafts, gene therapy, creams, and eye treatments. But of course, what we all really want is something that's more like a cure. And for us, the definition of that would be something that allows people to make protein in the skin and have a more normal quality of life, as well as having something to combat the malignant skin cancer that is a given with severe forms of EB. So what are the research areas? We have a cell and gene therapy categories and also protein and drug therapy areas. The categories are the same for many genetic conditions, and perhaps now is the time to say that there are around 6,000 genetic conditions in the world, 7,000 if you include all rare diseases. Many of those genetic diseases are rare, but collectively they account for around 30 million sufferers in Europe alone. Never mind the human suffering, which is enormous. They account for a staggering number of hospitalizations worldwide. The strategies that treat and cure some will treat and cure many, and we should be able to learn and adapt from each other's conditions. So Jennifer Doudna says, we may be nearing the end of genetic disease. That CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing pioneer saying these words is fantastic. And whilst we're a little way off, this is a great goal to have. So just like to highlight some recent EB news and particularly good EB treatment success. You may actually already have heard of a young Syrian refugee with junctional EB who received gene-corrected skin grafts to most of his body. And here's a little video that I want to play around that.
This young boy, whose parents don't want him identified, had until recently been suffering from a rare genetic skin disease that left him covered with open sores and blisters.
hatte richtige Schmerzen und hat mir gefragt oder hat viele Fragen gestellt. Ich konnte damals nicht antworten. Zum Beispiel, warum habe ich diese Krankheit? Warum habe ich das Leben?
His doctors say they had no options left until the boy's parents urged them to consider experimental gene therapy.
So then we thought we could do nothing for this kid and opted for a palliative care approach. We discussed it with the family and they begged us to do something about it or to try anything we could. And then we got in contact with Professor Luca and we discussed this case and he offered us to give us skin to cover the whole body of this kid.
Italian physician Michele De Luca's therapy was still in the experimental phase, but he agreed to try it as a therapy of last resort for the boy.
Hanno cercato in tutti i modi.
The medical team in Germany tried anything they could do to help this child, but there were no real possibilities. The father started researching on the internet, and he spoke about it with the surgeons. The surgeons had never dealt with genetic therapy, but when they saw that experiments were being carried out, they contacted me to ask if we could try it as a compassionate act.
De Luca's team took a small patch of unaffected skin from the boy, inserted a healthy version of the gene that caused the disease, and then grew a square meter of skin for the boy. They grafted this new skin onto the boy in 3 different operations, beginning in early 2016.
Già dopo.
Already he was better after the first transplant on the forelimbs in October. Then after the second transplant, the bigger one on his back, the regeneration of the skin did something to the boy. He got better right away. His vital parameters were getting better, and that's when we realized that we had done it.
It worked. No, we're happy that it works. This kid is back to his normal life again. That's what we dreamed of doing, and it was possible. So it's fun.
From the edge of death to a normal life. 2 years later, the boy is back in school, off medication, and living a completely normal life. But his team of doctors will have to monitor him closely over time to watch for skin cancer or any other complications. Kevin Enix, VOA News.
So that's an amazing little story. And I know that Michele is hoping to start another trial next year with more patients with junctional EB. And it would be fantastic to be able to see those sorts of successes in other forms of EB with other sorts of therapies as well, and more systemically rather than just with skin grafts. So just another few little things to note. EB is incurable, but now we have a first approved treatment. It's a wound healing cream called Filsavez, which has been developed by Amaranth Pharma. So it's the first EMA-approved treatment. And it isn't a gene therapy, but at least the regulators now have heard of EB and have approved one treatment for it. And the next question is whether NICE will allow it to be used for junctional and indystrophic EB and pay for it. Another good bit of news is that on the horizon, we have a potential gene therapy cream developed by Crystal Bio. Phase 3 trials are finished, and their team are going for market authorization. And Abeona Therapeutics are generating epidermal gene-corrected epidermal skin grafts, which have so far shown fairly positive results. So that's good news too. And this is just the next slide is just a little diagram of the sort of improvements that Crystal have got with their gene replacement cream. So what are we doing at CureEB to try and help? This is just a snapshot of some of the projects we are or have funded. We're primarily focused on cell and gene therapies to try and tackle the root cause of EB and address the funding gap that exists between lab stage research and early clinical trials. I'll just talk very briefly on examples that deal with the theme of these meetings, cell and gene therapy. So the first couple of trials we funded were to do with MSC cells given intravenously, so cell therapy. So back in 2015, a trial started at Great Ormond Street using donor mesenchymal stromal cells that were given intravenously. The trial was called EBSTEM. And on the EBSTEM trial, which is a cell therapy, these are the sorts of improvements that we got. Now, Mission EB is something that has been born out of both the EBSTEM trial in children and ADSTEM trial in adults. And with collaborative funding from the NIHR, there's now a big trial going on at Great Ormond Street, giving these umbilicals called stem cells to children via intravenous infusions. We hope that they might give a sort of similar effect. And again, these cells are not modified in any way. It is a cell therapy. It's sort of bringing down inflammation, but children on the EBSTEM trial did have improved wound healing, less itch, fewer blisters. They felt a lot better. So, and we're hoping that we'll have the same effect with children on Mission EB. And for a condition that has nothing, this kind of change, it could be significant to start off with. We also funded a trial called Lenticle F, which was a collaboration between UCL and King's. It was the first gene therapy, EB gene therapy trial in this country using autologous gene-corrected fibroblasts. This approach is also being used by Castle Creek Biosciences, who are taking dermal fibroblasts from patients, culturing them, gene-modifying them, then injecting them locally into affected areas. And they're looking to start a phase 3 trial soon. So one of the other projects that's going on at the moment is a trial called EBGraft, which was born out of a large EU project called GeneGraft. Skin biopsies are taken from patients and the keratinocytes and fibroblasts are isolated and cultured. Then they're transduced with a SYN inactivated retroviral vector encoding the collagen 7 gene. The corrected cells are further expanded to create skin equivalents for grafting onto patient wounds. We hope these grafts will work and will be particularly useful for really chronic large wounds and remodeling fingers where mitten deformities and contractures have taken their toll. So we're doing, we've funded lots of various gene editing projects, using talons and CRISPR-Cas9, generating iPSC cells, to now a new project using base and prime editors. And whilst the efficiency and safety of gene editing is getting better and better, we still need to hone and improve. And also there are still questions around the best delivery mechanisms for skin. So most gene therapy approaches in RDEB are centered on ex vivo editing, attempting to replace the entire collagen 7A1 gene. But this form of gene therapy has had limited clinical benefits, obviously, thus far. And base editing introduces precise single nucleotide edits in genomic DNA and has the ability to correct many recurrent COL7A1 mutations in a more sort of focused manner, treating RDEB at source. So in this newest project, the efficiency of gene editing tools will be tested to see how efficiently they will restore the COL7A1 gene and COL7A protein, as well as the safety of the approach, to make sure the editing does not cause any collateral damage to other genes. This will be done on skin cells donated by people with various forms of dystrophic EB. And we'll also be testing different methods of delivering gene editing tools into cells. Now, all of us have become a lot more aware of mRNA since coronavirus, and base editors can be delivered via messenger RNA to be used for in vivo gene editing. And delivering them would be lipid nanoparticles, we hope. And so this is quite an exciting, development. And I think the fact of the pandemic meant that these technologies have really advanced in record time. So we're quite hopeful about these, the potential for clinical translation. So I hope you all have a better idea of EB and what sorts of research has been done to try and tackle it. Overall, I have immense hope for people with genetic diseases. We've seen some of the successes with haemophilia, SMA, SCID, and we want life-changing treatments for people with EB, hot on the heels of these successes. I want to thank you all for listening, and best wishes to you out there with EB or any other genetic disease. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Sharmila. It's amazing work that yourself and Cure EB are doing for EB research. So we're just looking to wait for any questions that are coming in, but while we wait, I do have a few questions for yourself. There seems to be a lot of types of gene therapies coming through for EB, especially with a few videos you showed in your earlier slides. Is there any of those coming over to the UK soon?
Well, it's a very good question, and we are hoping that Crystal Bio will test their gene therapy cream in the UK, or they'll get market approval, which we hope will then get approved. If the FDA take it, then hopefully it'll get approved by the EMA here. But so far, they have not trialed it in the UK or anywhere outside the US. So that's, to be seen.
No, it was amazing seeing that video where they managed to give it to the one child and saw remarkable effects from it, which is amazing.
Okay, yeah. So that was the junctional EB. That was the skin graft trial in Italy. And I think Michele is going to be starting up another trial in Italy early next year. And it's possible, I guess, that some children from the UK might benefit from that. And it, to start off with, that would be a fantastic treatment for those with big wounds or with junctional EB, to try and heal those sore areas. Definitely worth pursuing. Yeah,
definitely. Just a separate question, walking away from the science a bit. What kind of advice would you give parents who also have children with EB, to kind of continue to look for treatments as you are doing? What kind of advice would you give them?
I mean, I'd say the first thing I'd say, if your children are young, have plenty of hope, because I really think there are going to be things out there to help moving forward, and just be on the lookout. Look, put Google epidermolysis bullosa into Google Alert, and just be aware of the sort of trials that are going on around the world. Many of them are going on in the States at the moment, but there are trials going on in Europe as well. And it's just trying to keep up to date, and if necessary, traveling to those areas. I mean, I think one of the big frustrations for me is that there isn't a worldwide register for EB at the moment. So if there was a trial happening for a particular, say, mutation, then I'm not sure how the companies would find those patients unless the patients are watching or their doctors are watching. So I think that's something that has to be addressed as soon as possible within the EB field, really.
I understand. So moving on to my other question. So within Cure EB, I imagine there is, a community of parents and carers with children who have EB. Could you tell more about that, and if there are any listeners in, how they would get in contact to, join your community per se?
Yeah, so there are various groups like Epidermolysis Bullosa Lounge, and then there are the patient support groups. Now we're not a patient support group, we just fund research. Yeah. But Deborah UK in the UK and Deborah International are really the patient support groups around the world. So if you have a child and you need support in that sense, then that's a good place to start. I mean, certainly as quite a few of us on the Cure EB team are parents, so we'd be happy to chat to you about our experience of living with a child with EB. But of course, you might need extra support in terms of grants and advice on social care, and then you need to head to one of the support organisations.
Yeah.
And for anybody who lives abroad, then there's EB Without Borders as well that can help in terms of getting potentially getting dressings and things like that.
Yeah, so there is a lot of support out there. It's just challenging into the correct resources, I guess.
Yeah.
Right, great. So I saw on your last slide you're starting some really interesting research with gene editing.
That's just
really exciting. Yeah. I imagine that's a collaboration within a research institute.
Yes, so that's King's College. That's Dr. Joanna Jakosz, who's from Poland, and she's doing this amazing work on gene editing, and she's just started this project with us. So that's quite exciting.
No, definitely. I think, as you said, I think majority of the people now know what mRNA is, and just touching upon that because of COVID, it's an interesting way of looking into trying to treat EB. So no, it's a very interesting project, and looking forward to hearing more about it soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges that we have with EB is that there are so many different genes and so many different points on various genes that can be affected. And for collagen 7, it's a very large gene, and there are so many different points on it that could go wrong to produce recessive dystrophic EB if you've got parents with recessive genes. So I think some form of personalized medicine is going to be the way forward for significant change.
No, definitely. I think, like as you mentioned, the field of gene editing is vastly changing. There's always some new technology that comes out, and with the help of technology changing and research undergoing, I can't imagine why there wouldn't be a form of treatment in the next couple of years for EB.
I think there will be some coming through.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, from your talk, there seems to be a few things coming through, and an amazing amount of research that's going into it. And the amazing work that yourself in Cure EB are doing, it's great. It's really great. And as an academic, it's really encouraging to hear these things coming through slowly.
Yeah, I think what we require is a little bit more funding. That would be fantastic. That everybody wants at the moment.
Definitely, funding is always welcome.
Absolutely, yeah,
definitely. Well, I think on that note, we can end the talk there, Sharmila. So I'd like to say thank you so much for agreeing to give a talk for the PPE series, and it's been delightful to hear your story and learn more about Cure EB and where it all started. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. So we have one more slide for you guys as viewers to just go over our next research series. So the next research series of BSGCT will be held in December. The date is to be confirmed. And this will be by Farzin Farzaneh, who is the Chief Scientific Officer of Viral Cell Biologics, Chair of Molecular Medicine at King's College London, and a trans-campus Professor of Molecular Medicine at Technical University of Dresden, Germany. So more information about this will be found on our website at bsgct.org. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all for listening and see you guys all soon. Have a lovely evening.